Okay, this article is the 7th of hundreds to count, serving others as an international consultant on economic and government choices. This is the wild, wild west of the Texas bank's devious deeds to prevent refinancing and more. Now, if you'll remember in Exhibit 2, my bank hand-scratched out my account number and put in somebody else's. And it was neither initialed by or approved. The change or additions were never approved or initialed by either party. And if you'll remember in Exhibit 6, my bank felony handwrites in the same unknown account number on my Apache Points ranch deed, and then felony filed and recorded it with neither party initialing the addition or the approval thereof. Now, when you go to filed evidence, Exhibit 7, yet again, proves beyond a shadow of a doubt of more fraudulent government and or loan documentation, devious deed infractions. Now, when you go to Exhibit 7, again, my bank felony handwrites in this unknown account number 160414. This time they did it on my Star West Retail Housing Development, and then felony filed and recorded the deed with neither party initialing the addition or the approval thereof. Now, my Star West Retail Housing Development, ML listed and priced at $3.5 million, can't be sold, traded, or refinanced due to the felony setting up my Star West Retail Housing Development deeds as collateral and possibly against someone else's unknown account number 160414. So it's collateralized to this unknown account number and not my account. Now, the $3.6 million on my Star West, I developed a plat for the developer's option. I'm not a developer, and nor do I want to be one. And this is 356 acres. And in the middle, I've been working with the Bushland School District to donate land to put a school in here with all the houses facing the school so there's no alleys, and it's to keep the place safe for the kids. And since I know the lay of the land and how everything drains, this is not a plat that's with the county, but this is for the developer's option because they know what they're doing. I don't. And also, I wrote up some restrictions for their option too that they may or may not use. It's totally up to them, but I did put a whole lot of work into it to market my Star West Retail Housing Development. And I'd worked a long time at the Bushland School to donate that land. Now, this $3.5 million is not what I priced it at on my financial statement. I priced it more around that $4,000 or $5,000 per acre because that was kind of the going rate. But once you do a lot of work and improve something to market it, it is of value at some point, and I was in no hurry to sell it. And yet again, does anyone know who account number 160414 belongs to? And again, pardon the pun, but I would be very happy to know whose account number this is and if it was leveraged against my Star West Retail Housing Development on this unknown account 160414. The truth always has a way of coming out sooner or later. And sooner or later it'll be revealed, but at this time I don't have the burden of proof of who this unknown account number belongs to. And of course, this was all unbeknownst to me while I was attempting to refinance my properties because I had an excessive amount of equity with competing banks prior to the federal bankruptcy court's proceedings. And any competing Texas bank will simply run a title search to see if my properties, if I actually own them or whatever, and they would discover that my bank's felonies are a multitude of fraudulent government and or low documentation, devious deeds, and infractions. Of course, they're not going to refinance somebody whose deeds are so messed up. Now, any seasoned competing Texas bank would immediately recognize this, and he would know that I'd been set up, or she would know that I'd been set up by the bank's felony-inflicted exclusive control for a felony future courthouse step foreclosure sales, illegal land grab. And no Texas bank in their right mind would ever risk their bank or their bank's stockholders to years of legal fees trying to fight a competing bank to prove legal points, felony banking practices, racketeering violations, and they were all committed against me. Because any competing bank knows that the interest gained on refinancing me would be at a loss. And of course, the bottom line would be a loss because it simply would not cash flow for any Texas bank stockholders. So, this filed evidence was later discovered and answered why these banks kept giving me these very odd excuses for turning down my refinance. And I thought it was very strange because I do run my numbers, and if you don't run your numbers, somebody will run them against you. And I knew I wasn't in financial trouble. And I knew I had an excessive amount of equity. And the banks kept turning me down, but they never mentioned the intentional inflicted felonies to me. Because there again, they don't have to show up as a witness and spend the bank's time and stuff to lose money. Banking is a very competitive business, and they're like anybody else. You got to nickel and dime it to stay in business. Now the end result is my bank's director's lawyer son wind up buying my development, and they're tied in with a bunch of developers. And as we speak, they're cutting streets on my Star West retail housing development. And this is the end result. And now remember, the bank director's law firm wind up charging me $47,000 for posting foreclosure against me. So this is a win-win for the bank's director lawyer. And then again, when you go to fileevidence.com, the letter to the new case, to the law reporters of these new case law changes that resulted in this, in spite of the file evidence, in direct defiance of current law, all the courts favored the preferred absolute powers agenda. Again, constitutionally, we're all created equal. Now anyone can add to any deed without the knowledge or initial approval of any signature party. Now anyone is judicially allowed to file and record uninitial additions to any deed anyone so chooses. And again, for self-justification, to quote these new case law changes to a judge and jury and any court of law from this day forth is a get-out-of-jail-free card for past felons in prison that they could use this to possibly get out of jail. District attorneys prosecuting present like-kind felons are going to have a hard time doing this while quoting these new case law changes. And justifying all future felons unsustainable short-term ill-gotten gains. Now, this all leads to a positive note on international consulting of economic and government choices. Now, any nation's judicial system knows full well the best preference for a stable economy within any nation is to hold the absolute powerful, unsustainable, short-term ill-gotten gains, is to hold them accountable in the first place. And this should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago, years and years ago. Now, this would avoid any nation's economic collapse, and history shows this would avoid tax-paying commoners' uprisings against their own nations through coup attempts, insurrections, and wars for independence and the rights to own property. This also, these uprisings of civil wars to avoid carpetbaggers' government confiscation of property and to maintain the tax-paying commoners' rights to own property. Now, both divided Texans and Americans are indeed been known to fight and die for all Americans' rights to own property. We are a rebellious group, and we don't like it when the absolute powerful take land from us. So, any nation's judicial system knows better. Take care of this in the first place. Now, under current events, history also proves printing too much money results in too much inflation. This does tax those who have money, but it reduces the money's buying power, and it does avoid deflation. Now, printing money can also help any nation's economic recovery to a point. But raising interest rates in times of too much printed money is simply against the market. And the market really doesn't care what your policies are. But when you're raising interest rate while you're printing up too much money, simultaneously stimulates any nation's economy in two different directions, and usually results in years of economic recession, depression, and of course, the end result is food riots, because you've shut down a lot of business. It's kind of like driving with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake.